I did it. Well, hi, folks, and good evening to you. Happy spring. Um, just a little background on what's new here at Casa Otto. I'm trying something a little different tonight. All the furry roommates, the feathery roommate, um, the scaly roommate, the box turtle, they are all upstairs. Basically, because I didn't want to risk breaking this glass vase. My wonderful neighbors, Mike and Audrey, sent over some roses, and
Talking? No, you see a picture.
they were not going to be needing. And I thought, well, this would make an even nicer arrangement than our usual fire, because it is it's we're getting to the end of fireside season. Of course, it's also northern Illinois, so we might have another fire or two before we are fully into warm weather. But anyway, glass vase and three furry roommates didn't seem like a good combination for this evening. It's one of the many reasons I don't have that many nice things. So anyway, they're upstairs. If there's any eruptions up there, you might well see, or not see them, but you might hear them in the background. Just kind of setting the scene. I also have our visual aid for this evening, this little tad, our bullfrog tadpole, which we'll get to a little bit later on. But I heard a couple of voices here. It looks like everybody's muted, but I don't have my screen set to where I can see everybody. So if everybody wants to just double check and make sure that your computers are muted, we'll go ahead and get tonight's slideshow started. There we go. And away we go. All right. um, if you had a chance to read last week's column, and even if you didn't, we're going to start off this evening by talking about a bird that is a recent arrival back in our area, and that is the tree swallow. I happened to notice these birds. I was actually looking for something else, as is so often the case. We were out at the river. Actually, we went out on a really nice day a couple of weeks ago to scout locations for our upcoming Rusty Rodeo. And as it turns out, Mount St. Mary, the park we thought we were going to do the event at, is fully booked the first weekend in August. There's weddings, there's picnics, there's other community events going on. So the Rusty Rodeo, the Rusty Crayfish Rodeo, got kicked out, and I went off in search of a new location. So I went and I started thinking, if I was a Rusty Crayfish, where would I want to be? Well, the other side of the river at Riverside Bowie Park, which is right on the border between Geneva and St. Charles. That seems like a good spot. And actually it is. There were good for the event, bad for the river. There were quite a few rusty crayfish in the river. We talked about the rusties. We've talked about them several times. If you're new this evening, rusty crayfish are an invasive species in this area, and this will be the fourth year that we've cooperated with the Forest Preserve District and with the Fox Valley Park District to hold an event to try and get them out of there. Well, folks, this is just a really long, roundabout way of saying I was at Riverside Bowie Park on the day the tree swallows were on the move, and it was also happened to be kind of a rainy day, and I was aware of things falling around me. What I thought I was aware of was raindrops, but then when I started to look a little more closely, I realized there were also birds swooping around, and there were probably easily I don't know, 100, 75 tree swallows in one tree, and then there were more birds on the move. Swallows are one of the spring migrants. They're fairly early arrivals, and they do move in groups. As we get through spring, we'll see other types of birds that are part of spring migration, but they don't happen to move in large flocks. But the swallows, especially the tree swallows, were quite noticeable these last couple of weeks. In fact, I even got an email this morning. Hey, I think I saw more tree swallows. There was another wave moving through. Now, here's a look at how these birds spend their year. The blue indicates where they spend their winter, and the yellow indicates where they migrate through, and then the orange pinkish color, that's where they breed. That's their summer range. So you can see Illinois as well within that breeding area. I mentioned we'll be seeing more spring migrants as we move through the season. One of the reasons tree swallows come through on the earlier end of things is because they're kind of one of those birds I think of as being switch hitters. They can eat insects, and they do a fabulous job, as so many other birds in the swallow family do. But they do a great job eating insects. But tree swallows also have the ability to eat other fruits. Now, I thought it would be really cool to show you guys tree swallows feeding on fruits or items other than insects. But I looked high and low, and I could not find any pictures. If any of you happen to have a picture of a tree swallow eating something other than an insect, I would love to see it. And if you share it with me, I'll share it with you guys next week. I'll share it with the group. But so this is not necessarily a fruit that they would eat, but it's a reasonable facsimile of a fruit. In fact, this is a crabapple tree not too far from my house, and I've seen a lot of overwintering robins paying visit to this. I believe it's a crabapple tree. It's a durable fruit. The hard skin on the outside protects the fruit on the inside. I've seen cedar waxwings go after these as well. So not necessarily a tree swallow food, but just wanted to get the point across. Tree swallows don't have to eat fruit, which is why they come back a little bit earlier than, say, barn swallows do. Now, this is a photo that was taken, I think it was dated 2004. So this is on a fence post at what was at the time called Campton Hills Park. It's now known as James O'Brien Community Park. It's where the Hickory Knolls Discovery Center is located. This is a couple of tree swallows, and this photo was taken by our extremely dedicated volunteer, Mr. Mike. He's been working for well over 20 years to maintain, ironically enough, it's called a Bluebird Trail. It's a series of bird houses in the eastern part of the Hickory Knolls natural area. Tree swallows love bluebird houses. Tree swallows are cavity nesters, but they aren't a primary cavity nester. Primary cavity nesters are those birds that have the ability to actually excavate a cavity. So that would be our woodpeckers. Chickadees can actually excavate if the wood is soft. They're pretty good at digging out their own holes as well. They're not opposed to using other cavities as well, but there are a significant number of birds that don't have the ability to dig a cavity, yet they need one in order to make their nest. So tree swallows fall into that category. And most of the bluebird houses that Mike maintains at Hickory Knolls are home to these birds. Now, tree swallows and barn swallows are closely related, but you can see there's some differences. Barn swallows, they have a little bit of orange around their head. They've also got that swallow tail, the deep V tail that trails behind them. Tree swallows, they have just a narrow notch at the end of their tail. They have a very similar flight habit. They're always, it looks a little bit erratic as they're flying around in the sky, and it's not because they don't know where they're going. It's just that they're following the path of an insect and they're trying to track it down. we'll see that sort of flight habit in other birds too. As they come through, then they're chasing after insects. We also actually see it at night in bats as well. As they, not that they're flying around lost, it's just that they're chasing after their food source. So, getting back to Mike, he has been pretty busy lately getting our bird houses up and ready to go again. If you ever visit Hickory Knolls in the wintertime and see these houses, in fact, we've had some well-meaning people come into the nature center and say, hey, you know what, I was out there, I was fixing your bird houses, all the opening, the front of them were all open. Mike does that on purpose to help keep the bird houses clean, actually rodent clean, free from rodents over the course of the wintertime. He opens up the front of the wooden boxes. So, and that's a good practice too. If you happen to have bluebird / tree swallow / cavity nesting bird houses on your own property, keeping them open or that's going to prevent some unwanted tenants from coming in. Oh, here we go. That's furry roommate number 1, Joey, saying, why am I not allowed to join the fun downstairs? Hopefully he'll quiet down. Anyway, so the houses now are ready for the birds and just in the nick of time because they are actually setting up for the coming breeding season. I wrote in the column about how I had my first encounter with tree swallows at what was then Campton Hills Park, probably around the year 2000. I was out there for a walk, in much the same conditions when I saw them a couple weeks ago. It was fairly warm, but there was a light rain falling, and I was just fascinated when these birds were swirling around, chasing insects, but also then landing on the top of these bird houses. And I was trying to, focus on a single bird or a couple of birds, and I felt something hit the back of my head. And I thought, oh, geez, this poor little bird, it didn't even see me standing here. Well, little did I realize at the time, these are birds that will defend an area that they're going to be raising their family in. And it was a tree swallow, it was a purposeful hit. It was wasn't hard or anything, but it was definitely the bird saying, come on, Missy, it's time for you to move along. So a little something to be aware of if you plan on going on a little tree swallow walk of your own. They will let you know if you're in their space. Now, those houses, this was a couple of houses. This is a slightly different style. This is I think these are PVC tubes with the appropriate size hole in the side. But it was something Mike shared with me one day. He brought these 2 nest boxes into the nature center. On the left, we have tree swallow nests. Tree swallows are known to line their nests with feathers. If they can find some from, say, a chicken, a poultry yard, if they're following a duck around, they might pluck a feather from them. They will sometimes use their own feathers too, but their tree swallow nest is characterized by the presence of feathers. That's as opposed to what we see on the right, which was an eastern bluebird nest. Now, I've forgotten, Mike had a good reason for why the eggs were still in this nest. This was actually in the winter time, so these weren't eggs that he he didn't steal the box away from a nesting pair of bluebirds. This was something, I can't remember what had happened there, but anyway, he wanted me to be able to see the difference in case I come across another sort of cavity that has a nest inside of it. That actually came into play, this was maybe 2-3 years ago. I was at Hickory Knolls and I noticed a pair of tree swallows, and they were staking out one of the gates in the parking lot. The gate was open on the end, and it wasn't a properly sized hole. Most birds, there's a specific hole that you place in the nest box for them to exclude species that you're not hoping you wouldn't want nesting in there. This was just an open. I would guess that the diameter was maybe, I don't know, 3.5 inches or so. But the tree swallows were checking out that that gate as a possible the metal tube or pipe that made the top of the gate as a possible home. They didn't end up nesting there. I checked repeatedly, and I never saw them back there after that one. It was a couple days and during a week, so maybe it was just too active. There was quite a bit of traffic in that part of the park. But they, I was thinking about it and how, before we had nest boxes, before there were European settlers here trying to attract these birds, hanging up birdhouses, a horizontal tree branch that was hollow would be an appropriate cavity for these guys. And I like, boy, this the pipe on this gate is actually a pretty good facsimile of that. So I don't know. I'll check again this year. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe in some remote gate, if we did end up with some tree swallows nesting there. The other reason I bring up the tree houses, and Bob, I think it was you who had mentioned this to me a couple of years ago. When the birds are done nesting there, the boxes remain, and as we get into the hotter, drier part of summer, these boxes are habitat for other creatures too. So this is a kind of what you would see as you're walking by, but if you were to zoom in, you could see that there were gray tree frogs that had found the little microclimate inside of this box to be just to their liking. This was in 2020, I believe, or was this just last year? I know last year we were very dry, so it could have been then. But this is a way for the tree frogs to conserve the moisture on their skin. There's humidity in that box. It's protected from the sun. It's what they decided was a great place to hang out. So multiple reasons to check these boxes out. One, to look at the tree swallows. Two, to get bonked on the head if you're into that kind of thing. And then three, check them later on and see if the tree frogs have found them again this year. Only in the wooden boxes, not the PVC tubes, but the wooden boxes seem to be serving other types of animals as well. Now, from there, let's move on to it's loosely bird related. It's really bird related in name only. We're going to talk about turkey tails, but not these sorts of turkey tails per se. We're actually going to apply this to these mushrooms here, the turkey tail mushroom. Boy, I remember this is one of the first mushrooms I learned when I first started volunteering for the Forest Preserve District. I remember the naturalist at Tecawitha Woods talking about turkey tail this and turkey tail that. And I thought, oh, what are these turkey tails? Well, as it turns out, it is a fungus that grows. It has this colorful pattern on it, and if you really don't even have to use your imagination very much to notice that it really does bear resemblance to the turkey tail, the tail of a turkey, that is. So this is a mushroom. If you look up turkey tails online, you're going to find out they have all sorts of medicinal uses. They're highly valued for a number of different treatments for people who are into foraging and making their own teas and it's not really herbal medicine, but homegrown sorts of remedies for different things. But it's also a mushroom that's just pretty easy to identify. However, when I was learning all those years ago about turkey tail mushrooms, I also remember hearing about false turkey tails. So I wanted to show you tonight how you tell the difference. So this is looking down. This was actually over at Fearson Creek Fen, and it was before they burned the area. you're curious, yes, turkey tails do burn, because when I went back again to check them out, they were just all black and crispy. So I have to find another source for looking at turkey tail mushrooms till some more grow back. But this was on a stump. It wasn't this. It was a stump that was cut off, so it wasn't even attached to the ground anymore. But they look like turkey tails, and as I was looking at them, I thought, I know there's a way you tell the difference. I just had to refresh my memory what it was. Well, as it turns out, it has to do with the pores underneath. If you notice, one of the scientific names for turkey tail was polyporous. That refers to the pores that are underneath, on the underside of the turkey tail. So I went back and I took some pictures of the underside of this fungus, and you can see, now I didn't put my lip balm there. I actually found out the better way to measure these pores is to use a ballpoint pen, because the standard for a turkey tail, we got that black bar again tonight. I should remember to put these labels up higher. You want to see pores that are spaced 3 to 8 pores per millimeter. And you think, well, what's a millimeter? Well, the recommended guidance I saw was to use the tip of a ballpoint pen. A ballpoint pen tip is about a millimeter wide. So 3 to 8 pores per millimeter, and chances are you are looking at a true turkey tail. Now, Trametes, that's, I think, the current genus name for this mushroom. There are other Trametes mushrooms or fungi around, but the true turkey tail, that's the size of the pores that you're looking for. And what exactly is a pore? Well, they almost look like little honeycombs, a little less regularly shaped. They're round, they're not hexagonal, but that's where the spores come from that helps this mushroom reproduce. That's how they're released. So this is a true turkey tail. However, as I mentioned, we also have, I forgot, there's one more thing. And I put this label down low too. The surface of this mushroom, there's a little bit of a fuzz to it, almost like on the surface of a peach. You know how peaches have that sort of velvety, fuzzy coating on them? A true turkey tail will have that too. Now, there are other Trametes that will have a hard, smooth surface, and there's one, I can't remember if it's called the hairy or the hoary, but it has, it's really fuzzy. So you want just a slight, the same sort of sheen that you would see on very short velvet. Look for that on the top surface of these mushrooms as well. Now, false turkey tails, now color can be variable, and you can see this does have that fan shape, and it does have the gradation of colors like you see on our true turkey tail. But when you flip over a false turkey tail, what you see is a smooth surface. There are no pores at all. So they're both pretty cool looking mushrooms. They both do that important decomposer function. When you're looking at a fungus like this, remember you're just seeing the fruiting body. The working part of the mushroom is or fungus is going to be the mycelium that are reaching their way into whatever the mushroom happens to be growing on. That fruiting body is coming out of. So their purpose is to break things down. They can digest parts of oftentimes woody plants that are not usable by a lot of other organisms. So they're important things to have around. They're fun looking, and if you're in that kind of thing, you might want to check out some of the medicinal uses of the turkey tail as well. All right, I see we have the furry roommate we never get to see. Jimmy's here tonight, probably because the dogs are trapped upstairs. That means the cat can come downstairs and not have to be bothered with the things he hates. Also known as the dogs. So yeah, we might have to put up a little bit of Jimmy business here. As we go to our next topic, and Miss Bonnie, I have to thank you for this photo. The spring witch hazel, the vernal witch hazel, also known as the Ozark witch hazel. It is still blooming, and Bonnie, you described the fragrance as quite pervasive. The other sort of warmish and sort of humidish evening. Now, this is a witch hazel that does, it turns up around here from time to time. It is, however, considered native to the south central United States, hence the name Ozark. But it's also, just like our fall witch hazel, which blooms in November and attracts winter moths. This is also a plant that attracts hardy insect pollinators. Not going to be seeing a ton of butterflies at this time of year, so this plant makes itself available to other pollinators as well. And yeah, there's still some hanging on out there. If you happen to see a plant that looks like the witch hazel that you saw in the fall, has a wonderful aroma surrounding it, you're probably looking at the vernalis, the spring blooming witch hazel. Okay, so this weekend I had all sorts of texts and Facebook messages from all kinds of people with all kinds of questions, and this actually turned in. I was talking to my friend Amber, and she's like, "Oh, this isn't a very exciting hobby." And I said, "Are you kidding me? Nature nerds are going to love this." So this is not Amber's picture. This is actually a photo of the osprey that turned up dead in front of the Otter Cove Water Park, I don't know, about 7 years ago or so. The reason I put it up is not to talk about the dead osprey, although it was such an amazing find to find this endangered bird lying dead on the sidewalk. It was amazing and sad at the same time. This, by the way, is the bird, if you happen to visit Hickory Knolls and you see the taxidermy mount of an osprey by the turtle pond, that's this bird. The reason I brought it up tonight is because of its jewelry. It's got a bird band. Now, this is something you might be able to catch a glimpse of from time to time, especially if you have binoculars or if you've got a camera with a good telephoto lens. But this is data that is collected at the Patuxent Bird Banding Station, not banding station, but the bird folks out in Maryland. This data is... banding birds is something that helps us learn so much about these creatures that before bird banding we didn't know. This is the same bird we saw here at the same time last year, or is this a completely different one? But by giving each bird its own unique identity, data like migration patterns as well as even things like lifespan can be collected over time. So when this bird was found, we saw the band, and we sent the information in. And look at this, nature nerds! You can get your own very cool certificate of appreciation for calling. Or actually, I think we emailed all this information. You go online, and there are a form you can fill out where you give you give them what you found, and they will give you what they know. So in the osprey's case, this was a bird that, so it was 2016, so that would have been 6 years ago. Turns out it was banded 10 years previously in July of 2006. And it was... we think it was making its way back to its natal territory of Rice Lake in Minnesota. So you get these certificates whenever you fill out the form online. And I found out that my friend Amber's husband, Dan, has turned this into a little hobby. He's been kind of focusing on geese. And I asked him, I said, Dan, is it just leg bands or can you do neck bands too? And he said there's actually provision on the form for either one. You can tell them whichever kind of form that you have gotten. So my plan to keep the dogs upstairs so that the nice glass vase wouldn't get knocked over was pretty good until I realized, until Jimmy realized that there is a glass vase here. I may have to take some evasive maneuvers here so that the glass vase doesn't get knocked over. But anyway, back to the topic. So Dan has made a hobby of this. I think he's got 7 certificates so far. And I asked Amber, I said, so how does he get that information? Because some bands are not that easy to see. Well, she sent me this. And what he does is he just takes as many photos as he deems necessary to get all the numbers on the band. And then he goes online and he fills the form out and gets a certificate back. As I recall, when we sent in the information on the osprey, it wasn't more than a day or two later that we got our certificate of achievement back. So nature nerds, if you're looking for kind of a cool hobby, if you want to learn more about the birds around you, I should add too, it doesn't have to be a living bird. Unfortunate side of bird migration is that a lot of them do end up crashing into windows and things like that. They might have to go to a rehab center to get better. They might not survive at all. But if you see a bird with a band, it's worth it to report those numbers, because it goes into a tremendous data set that's helping us learn more and more about the birds around us. So it's also, besides migration season, it is also mink season. 3 of the texts and Facebook messages I got this weekend regarding, the good news is the vase didn't break. Two of the Jimmy's nowhere to be seen. Mink are on the move right now. They've been here all winter. They're not an animal that hibernates. They're mammals, so they don't really migrate. But they do make their presence known. This is the season now. We're getting into waterfowl nesting season. And waterfowl nests and mink are, they're like bacon and eggs, only it's mink and eggs. Mink love eggs. In fact, they will even go after the nesting waterfowl themselves. Many times when we were still working out of Potawatomi, we'd have female mallards attempt to nest in the native plant garden or around the community center there, and the mink would get them just about every time. They love to eat the eggs, and if the mom doesn't escape in time, she can become prey for these animals too. Mink are so very good at what they do. They will kill a lot of prey. They might only eat a fraction of it. They are known to cache some food, but a lot of times the food will go bad before they're able to feed it. Yeah, I remember when I worked at Red Oak several years ago, it was April, it was a rainy day. I looked out, we were so excited because that was a year that we finally had gotten wood ducks in our wood duck nest box. Well, I looked out through the light rain that was falling in the woods, and I saw what I thought at first was a squirrel climbing up the tree, but then I thought, now wait a minute, this squirrel is a lot longer in the body and it's a lot darker than any of the squirrels we've seen around here. And yes, it was a mink, and yes, it was climbing a tree, and yes, it did go in the box. The wood duck hen was not in there at the time, but there were eggs in there, and the mink availed itself. In fact, I remember when we went down to kind of see if we could shoo the mink out of there, we ended up with getting, and this was before cell phones, I wasn't able to get any pictures, but got a great view of a mink with a little cap of eggshell on its head as it climbed out and then scampered down the tree and went back down to the river. But mink do have an appetite for waterfowl. Miss Bonnie, as you learned, they also have a habit of eating backyard poultry. This was, Bonnie, I forget if this was headed for your chickens or I know Bonnie did lose several chickens to a mink. Here in my neighborhood, here in St. Charles, I know I've had neighbors who have lost, one person lost all of her hens to a mink that got in, ate a bunch of eggs, killed a bunch of hens, didn't really eat the chickens, just killed them because, again, they're very efficient predators. A quick bite to the neck was all it took. And then away it went. Now with mink, and I'm not gonna claim to be able to tell whether this is a male or female, but this is a species where the males are significantly larger than the females. Males are called bucks, and boy, we had someone bring us a roadkill mink several years ago. This person actually thought it was an otter because it was so large, but it wasn't. It was a mink. Mink do have, as we could see on Amber's picture here, they do have a little bit of white, usually, but not always, on the chin. Sometimes it's on the chest. Mink, it's a means of identifying individuals. Actually, the pattern of white on the body underneath like that varies from mink to mink. So if you happen to have a lot of mink around, you can actually tell which one is which based on how those white spots add up. So besides it being mink season, it's also tick season. And Laura, I have to, I guess, thank you for this. This is an important heads up to anybody who's going outside. Laura had texted me this photo with, this looks like a female deer tick, and indeed it is. So, boy, we are just, these things are just turning up everywhere. Just like the mink is really good at what it does, ticks are really good at what they do. I found this great photo from Wisconsin DNR. This is a look at a female deer tick, probably more up close than you'd ever really want to be. But look at those mouth parts. So not only are they really long, they're made for piercing, but inside those mouth parts, there's a lot of little hooks that the tick uses to attach. And the whole process of getting situated, thankfully, it takes some time. They get those mouth parts inserted. They also exude a substance. It's I think of it as like an adhesive or a glue, but it helps cement the tick in its feeding spot. And only after it's found, a place to get situated like that, does it begin to feed. And that can take anywhere from several hours to over a day. Laura, are you here tonight, Laura?
Yeah, I am.
And so you said that this was, you had done what all the experts recommend is when you're out in a natural area, you come home, you take a shower. It's supposed to get rid of the ticks, and yet this one persisted. Is that right?
Yeah. Now I gotta say it was probably my own fault because I did go off trail. I saw.
That's what all the cool stuff is.
Yeah, exactly. But I came home and I showered and I did a tick check and thought I was fine, and woke up this morning at about 9 o'clock. I, scratched my stomach and I'm like, wait a minute, and
there's an extra
sure enough, and I'm like, oh great, I haven't even had my second cup of coffee yet. But so it was I thought I had done everything, but so I'm keeping an eye out on it on the site. It does have a it is about a quarter size of redness around it. So I'm just gonna keep an eye on it. But yeah, they're little buggers. They'll get you.
They are, yeah, they are, and they're hungry right now. They've overwintered and they need that blood meal, so they can. And ticks are not like mosquitoes. The females and the males both need to feed on blood. So it's with mosquitoes, it's just the females that give you the bite, but these guys, it's both sexes that will help themselves, and. I know, Laura, when we were texting earlier, I looked up and the CDC says that generally it takes 24 to 36 hours.
Yeah.
Usually, if you find the tick right away, the sooner you find the tick, I should say, the less chance of disease transmission. And the way that happens is when they're feeding, if any. Their body is the reservoir for the pathogens. And so if any of the germs that are inside their body make their way out and back into your bloodstream, that's how the infection can occur, which is a great reason to not stick a match on their bottom. There's a great reason to not try to suffocate them with nail polish or Vaseline or Vicks, anything that's going to upset the tick that may cause them to regurgitate. You don't want anything that's in their body to get into your body. So, see, you did the right thing. You got the tweezers out. Do you want to describe how you pulled it out?
Yeah, I got to the base of it as much as I could and just did a steady pull. And it came out head and all. So I was glad about that. Was kind of wishing I had my husband there to do the job, but yeah, so I just got to the base, as close as I could to the skin and just steadily pulled it out. Yeah.
Excellent. And that's exactly what all the experts recommend, getting behind the head. I had one, and they do tend to go for, they can sense warmth. They can almost, because warmth means that there's a blood supply nearby. A lot of times they try to climb up. That's why we oftentimes will find ticks on our necks and on our heads, because the blood supply is so rich. But this time of year, they might sink in, anywhere. It's like, well, they're like me with a chocolate cake. I can't wait. Just dive right in. So I had one on the back of my upper arm. This was, I forget, 2 or 3 years ago. And I did the same thing as you, Laura. I was I don't know, I think I was scratching my arm, and I thought, wait a minute, I don't have a mole or anything back there. What the heck is that? And I go and I look in the mirror, and sure enough, here's this tick. And it had been there for a while because I couldn't even see. I mean, it looked like I had like 2/3 of a little watermelon seed sticking out of my arm. So, trying to, have you ever had that challenge, try and kiss your elbow? Well, that's what I was trying to do, only with, well, actually, I wasn't trying to kiss my elbow, but that's what it looked like I was trying to do. It was reaching, had my one arm, and it was on my right arm, so I was trying to do it with my left hand. Long story short, I ended up getting part of the tick out. So I ended up going to the doctor, and they dug out the rest of the tick. They did put me, doxycycline is the antibiotic that they prescribe for tick bites. But then I ended up getting a tetanus shot too, because the doctor had to dig so much to get the rest of the tick out. He said, you know what? It's not going to hurt you to get another tetanus shot. So this is all to say they are out there and they are ready and they are gunning for us. So keep that in mind. We've talked about this product before, but more and more they're saying that, and if you, like me, have a little aversion to putting repellents on your actual skin, there are products out there where you can treat your clothing. And this one is the Sawyer product. This is what a lot of our park staff uses. You can treat your gear, and it lasts for 6 washings or 6 weeks or the instructions are on there, but it's something you don't have to continually reapply. You can put it on, and it's good for a period of time. This is super helpful. The trick about tucking your pant legs into your socks. These ticks are really tiny, and so I found that I've gotten ticks on me even with my socks tucked in. Now, some people will add a layer of tape around the sock. That can help too. Some people will even put a layer of carpet tape so it's sticky on both sides, so they can trap whatever happens to be crawling up them. I kind of feel with that way sometimes you're getting innocent bystanders as well. But just wanted to make sure you're all aware that it's mink season and it's tick season too. Thanks, Laura, for that important heads up.
Sure.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Let's talk about something fun and happy. I took this video the same day I was watching the swallows. This was a slightly rainy day. The temperature was in the lower 50s, and this is also at Riverside Park, which again, it's right on the border between St. Charles and Geneva on the east side, Riverside Drive / Route 25 at Division Street. I heard one or maybe two little chorus frogs at the north end of this wet area. The Riverside also acts as a stormwater retention area as well. It's been planted for many years now in native plants. It's actually a cool area that the Fox River Bike Trail goes right past. So I heard a couple of chorus frogs, and then I heard this. This is a frog. It's not a rare frog, but it's one that usually gets drowned out by all the dozens and dozens of chorus frogs in a pond. This is the sound of the northern leopard frog. I should have said, turn your volume up. It's that snoring sound. They will oftentimes follow their snoring with a series of three kind of clucking-like sounds. The snoring part. Sounds like that. And then, it's something, if you are a frog monitor, if you're interested in going out and listening for frogs, this is a sound that's really easy to overlook because of all the other sounds. It might be traffic noise, but a lot of times it is the chorus frogs that drown them out. These are frogs that usually are in temporary water bodies, but leopard frogs will sometimes also be in marshes that have water year-round. So they kind of cross over that way. I don't know. I've never really heard them in the actual Fox River, as we do get slow areas of the river where we'll have green frogs or bullfrogs that breed, but the leopards tend to be more in the smaller water bodies, and those that are sometimes more temporary in nature. But they are kind of third on the list after the chorus frogs and the spring peepers. We start to hear the leopard frogs too. So keep an ear open. Challenge yourself to see if you can hear the leopard frog, even when there's other types of frogs that are calling. So with that, I'm going to stop the screen share because we have our special guest tonight. We have a member of the Ronidae, the frogs, frog family, neurons. And we've got a member of the cat family too. We've got Jimmy here. Stop that. All right, so those of you who've never seen Jimmy before, he's not usually around when the doggy roommates are at the program, but here he is, and he is determined to make sure I pet him. There, you can hear him purr. I'm going to get our, I got to put the microphone down here. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. So several weeks ago I mentioned that we were caring for a bullfrog, tadpole. This is what has been on my counter ever since. This is a little Tad, and Tad is eating Hikari algae wafers. Those of you who have ever done any fish keeping might be familiar with that brand. It's a sinking wafer. It's got all kinds of plant types of foods. I think it's actually got maybe some brine shrimp or something in it too. I think there's a little animal component as well. But the bullfrog was not in the greatest of shape when we got him. This little guy, and he's still, he seems to be eating, he seems to be growing. He's still got this weird kink in his tail. I'm going to see if I can get him out here, and we'll put him on camera so you can see him. Bullfrogs are one of two species in our area where their tadpoles take a year and sometimes 2 years to develop. So they're a frog that is going to be breeding in permanent water bodies. So retention ponds, like I mentioned before, quiet areas along the river, backwaters of streams, creeks in the area. They're pretty highly patterned, lots of freckles here on the bullfrog tadpole. Actually, this is going to give me a chance to see. Yes, he does have teeny tiny little legs coming out here. I'm going to turn it around here. Let's see if going closer is going to... Oh, he's nervous. He's shaking. But if you look at where the tail meets the body, you'll see there's a little bit of growth there. Tiny little legs are starting to come out. He is still very much breathing oxygen through his gills. That's one of the really mind-blowing aspects of tadpole transformation, is when they quit breathing oxygen, taking in oxygen through their gills in the water, and they start breathing air through lungs, oxygen in the air through their lungs. They have a scraping mouth. They don't really have teeth. They mostly eat plants, but, can I turn that? You know, I'm going to wet my hand. I'm going to see if I can hold him up here. Just got to make sure Jimmy doesn't decide to have tadpole for dinner. I'm going to hold him up here. No, it's not going to work. It's a little too slippery. Just Pam's clumsy hands. Okay, let me see if I can hold him up. So there's the big old tad belly. White, and you can see his mouth. He's probably thinking, doggone it, lady. I have to change his water every day, and I take him out of the water like that, and I think he thinks I'm trying to kill him. But and this is a good sized tadpole. Any tadpoles that you're seeing in water right now that are this big are going to be either green frog or bullfrog. I don't know, like once the legs start to punch through, I'm not exactly sure how long it is until we have a frog, but it shouldn't be, it certainly won't be another year. It'll be sometime this year that we're going to have to change Tad's name. Anyway, I know you wanted to see that. I think I'll turn it over to you guys to see if anybody has any questions. And barn swallows, yes, they will dive bomb intruders too. So that's a good point, Kay. I know I've gotten, well, in fact, we used to have an employee at the park district who wanted to know how she could get rid of the barn swallows that were nesting on the side of her house because A, she was afraid of them, and B, she thought they were being mean. And I'm like, well, but you would go after people who are trying to possibly harm your kids, wouldn't you? And once she understood that, she had a little bit more tolerance for them. Plus, I told her they eat bugs, including mosquitoes, which those were probably the one thing she hated more than she hated her barn swallows. But yes, swallows, fierce protectors. There's another type of swallow called the northern rough-winged swallow. And when I worked at Red Oak, every summer down there in North Aurora, when I would go down to the little cave that's on the property there, every summer there was a pair of rough-winged swallows that nested just above the entrance on the inside of the cave. And they would come out and swoop around and do their best to try and get us to move on. So yeah, it's a swallow thing. Yes, Laura. Kitty was trying to eat the roses. Mike and Audrey, if you're at all worried about your vase, I'm happy to say that it did survive. It fell on the carpet. So, but again, live and in person, why I don't have many nice things here. Okay. Oh, yay for you, Greg and Kelly. You've been out, heard a chorus of leopard frogs. So yeah, let's say Riverside Buoy is the place to go. And wow, March 20th, that was really early. Riverside Buoy Park on the border between St. Charles and Geneva on the east side. If you want to go check out some leopard frogs, they will probably be winding up their calling in the next few weeks. So one of those precious springtime limited time engagements. Daily tad care. Yeah, so Laura, I'm sorry, Diane, I have water from the tap, but I actually take it from the work tap because there's no water softener there. So I take it from there and then I put a dechlorinator and I fill up I've got a 5-gallon jug that I fill up. And I use dechlorinator. There's a product called Stress Coat that not only takes out the chlorine and the chloramine, but it also adds, I think it's got aloe in it. It's kind of a gel. I put little Tad here. I'm going to put him back in his larger enclosure here. I put him in a cup while I empty out his water. In fact, about every other water change, I put it in my compost because I think, all the plant-based gook that's in there has to be good for the compost heap. But then there's a slime that's formed on the inside, so I have a paper towel that I actually reuse. I just squeeze it out and let it dry, but I figured that keeps the bleaches and whatever else they use to make paper towels at a minimum. So I wipe out the inside, rinse it really good. I wipe off, he's got a little hidey space there of 2 rocks, and I wipe those down too to get the slime off of it. And I keep the jug of water in the kitchen so it's the same temperature as the container that's on the counter, and it's right by the coffee, so I can't forget to do it every day. That's pretty much it. Oh, I did do one other thing. I cooked for the Tad. I chopped up, I boiled some romaine lettuce, and then I chopped it up and formed it into balls, and I froze it. The balls are about the size of, they're smaller than a dime, like maybe a small jawbreaker. And I put those in the freezer, and I'll break one of those off just so he has a little variety. Now, I have read that they'll feed on carrion in the water too, and again, there is some animal protein in those algae wafers, but When I picked him up, they were feeding him bloodworms, which I thought was an unusual choice for a tadpole. So the lettuce balls are about the size of the end of the lip balm. These are really handy things, but it's about that big around, and the tadpoles are kind of messy eaters. They're kind of like water turtles. They eat because they're eating in the water. There's food particles that end up getting strewn around. So water changes I do every other day. He doesn't seem to like his water super pristine, but it just gets too stinky after 2 days to let it go any longer than that. I hope that helps, Diane. Oh, thanks, Susie. Geese are nesting on the Illinois Bridge in the flower boxes on both sides of the road. South side has parents, north side has eggs. See, and I think this is an adaptation birds are showing. I had a woman contact me over the weekend about a duck that was nesting in her yard, and she has two Westies, terriers, that like to chase things and kill things. And she said, why in the world was this duck trying to nest here? Well, I think ducks and geese, I think they're willing to accept a certain amount of risk. Like the devil is better than the other than the mink. A nest on a flower pot next to a busy road might not seem like an ideal setting, but it's a place a goose isn't afraid to go, but it's probably a place that a mink is going to be less inclined to travel to. So setting up a nest in a parking lot or a flower pot somewhere. In fact, I hear there's a goose nesting in front of Otter Cove too, in one of the big flower pots there in front of the water park. They're giving up a little bit of their privacy, but they're also gaining a little bit more in the way of protection from area predators. That's good to know. I suppose the city will be putting up their "Look out, the aggressive goose is back" sign that they always do.
On the south side, the males were standing guard and the mom was nesting. But on the north side, I didn't see either parent and just the eggs.
Okay.
So I don't know if they went away or what happened.
That usually means she's not done yet. That they'll lay about an egg a day, but they won't actually start incubating until all the eggs have been deposited. That's how they get that cute little lineup of all the babies hatching at the same time and
Like
following mom. So it could be she's still working on it.
Okay. And I did let the city know. I didn't know if they already knew, but
Oh, yeah, I think that sign is just always in the shop ready to come out, isn't it? That one's for, and then the red-winged blackbird one over by Carroll Tower.
yep.
All right, Kim, just a question. The frogs in the ephemeral ponds, do those tadpoles actually have a chance or are they doomed? We have some at Johnson's Mound and I worry about them. You know what, Kim? It depends on the species. So a lot of the frogs that breed in the ephemeral ponds, as long as we don't have... So 2012, that was a hideous year for frogs. It got really warm really soon and a lot of our ephemeral ponds dried up very quickly. So frog survival rate that year I don't think was very good. But normally the frogs that lay their eggs in those ponds, the tadpoles that hatch from those develop at a very quick rate, usually in a matter of a couple of months. They are ready to go. You might have seen toad tadpoles. They start off as tiny little black tadpoles, maybe less than a centimeter in length, and they develop very quickly and they exit en masse as a big group, and they are still really tiny, just slightly bigger than a eraser on a pencil, but there is a chance that a pond will dry up, but the benefit of breeding in an ephemeral pond outweighs that risk. There's not going to be any fish predators present there, so
Oh, that's true.
so yeah, so they're
Okay.
evolved to grow up fast. They when they exit the pond, they still have some growing to do, but they get out of there quickly before it dries up.
Well, thank you. That's good to know. I always worry about them because we have those ephemeral ponds every year, and I just think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen
What are you
to those?
thinking?
Yeah, right. Yeah, what are you thinking?
Well,
So,
in some
Hey,
species
Pam?
are.
What's your cat?
Going after the tadpole.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Probably smells like tadpole soup. Oh, oh, Jimmy. Yeah, that would be bad. We've got him this far. He's starting to get legs. I'd hate to lose him now. So yeah, though chorus frogs, spring peepers, American toads, toads, I should say, they won't breed anywhere. It could be an ephemeral pond, pristine woodland pond somewhere that's got tiger salamanders and spring peepers. They'll breed in there. They'll also breed in a flooded tire rut, a puddle on a road. Toads really, all they just need is a little bit of water, and they make so many eggs that if a bunch of them don't hatch, we're going to be okay because we don't. They're doing very well now. Spring peepers, they're probably of our quote unquote common frogs. They're probably the most unusual. The gray tree frogs seem to be doing fairly well right now. I know there was some concern a few years ago, but we've certainly been seeing a lot of them. And I think they're what they call locally common. So once they find what they like, they stick with it and are doing well in those areas. Let's see, who am I forgetting? The leopard frogs. Permanent or semi-permanent water for them, and then their bullfrogs and green frogs need the permanent water because their tads take so long to grow up. Anybody else have anything? I see Jimmy is now moving on to eating the roses. The baby's breath. He's eating the baby's breath. Mike and Audrey, thanks again. I will rearrange these. I'll put your vase somewhere where he can't get to it. I very much appreciate the sharing of the roses.
Hey, Pam?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the ephemeral ponds, so the tiger salamanders, they lay their eggs in the ephemeral ponds.
Correct.
And then, what do they look like as they hatch? I mean, do they...
That's a great question, and maybe I should do a little segment on that. I'll describe it to you, and then I know I've got some pictures. They call them larvae as opposed to tadpole.
Okay.
And they have legs right away, so they've got four little legs, and then they've also got this cool, looks like almost like a clown collar.
Okay.
But it's their feathery gills. So a frog tadpole's gills aren't very prominent. They're little holes on the sides of their cheeks. But the salamander larvae have these feathery gills that pump the water past and extract the oxygen from the water that way.
That would be so cool to see.
I will make a note of that. Well, until recently, we had an axolotl at Hickory Knolls. Nothing bad happened to him. He just got reborn. Part of our administrative's different approach to display keeping. Axolotls are, well, in their native habitat, which is down in outside of Mexico City, they're highly endangered. There's not very many left in the wild, but there's millions of them that exist in universities and laboratories. There's a lot of experimentation done on them because salamanders and axolotls are actually pretty closely related to tiger salamanders. That's why we had it. You could look at an axolotl, even though it was, close to 10 inches long or so. He looked very much like a larval salamander, just giant. A salamander will transform and leave the pond. Usually August or so in this area is when they leave. So they grow up pretty fast too. I remember doing a summer camp a few years ago, and we were in the Hickory Knolls natural area, and a little boy rolled a log over. He was, "I found a lizard! I found a lizard!" And it was a very small tiger salamander. It didn't even have any spots yet. The tigers, when they first come out, they're pretty much all black, and then that yellow spotted pattern develops over time as they get older.
Cool.
So yeah, I will hunt up some pictures of that, and we'll talk about larval salamanders next week.
Thanks.
There's so much. I don't know how we're going to cram it in. we'll make it work because it's good nature. It's good for all of us. Does anybody else have anything they'd care to share? Does anybody have a mop? You notice Jimmy is, he's not going to be here for the cleanup. I think he feels he's done his work. He is the cat and I'm his staff. Anyway, folks, very much appreciate you spending part of your Tuesday evening here. And hope we see you back again next week. In the meantime, be safe, be well, and get yourself some good nature. Take care.
Good night, Pam.
Good night, Pam. Thank you.
So long.
Thanks a lot, Pam.
Night, Pam. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you.
You
Thanks,
too.
Pam.